how long have you lived there for?
We've lived here for 19 years in this house.
And how did you feel it right from the beginning, or was it something that stirred up later?
The first incident happened 2 months after we were married, when I saw who I thought was my husband, Mark, standing on the front porch. My mom was house sitting once, taking care of our cats while we were on vacation, and she was driving up to the house and parked out front and looked inside and saw a man in the living room, and she was upset, but she was going to go in and ask what someone was doing there, because that's the kind of gal she is. And when she went inside, of course, nobody was here, and that was just last year. So, I mean, there has been consistent activity in the house the whole 19 years we've been here.
Now, have you ever had any paranormal investigators go and check it out?
We have not, and frankly, I hate to say this, I never even had watched Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi until last winter. So we've never had any investigations done, and the funny thing is, I just joined a group, Western New York Ghost Hunters, and I'm excited about it because they're going to be investigating the Central Terminal in Buffalo. And I know the Ghost Hunters have been there, and they are coming back this spring, so I'm excited about that. Learning how to use all the equipment now, so that will be interesting.
Oh, that's terrific. And you'll have to do your own house since it's in the EVPs.
I'm scared to death to do my own house because I don't want to hear what they have, If somebody else wants that. Exactly. I'll do anybody else's house because I have to try to sleep there at night.
Exactly. What if they say, get out?
I know. Or we never wanted you here. I'd be crushed.
That is really such an interesting story. Before you ever lived in the house, did you ever have any other sort of paranormal activity, or did it just start when you went to that house?
I don't really think that I have, but I always have been, even though I've been skeptical, I've always been open to the possibility, and I've always, I suppose all kids, love ghost stories.
But you know the history of your house, if anybody ever died there?
The only thing that we could come up with, we went to our local historical society in Jamestown. It's called the Fenton Historical Society. And the only thing that we could come up with was a rumor of a report of a gentleman around the turn of the last century, we believe it was 1901 or 1902, who hung himself in our attic. And I have never had any kind of feeling or experience in the attic. The only time I've ever up there, though, for any long period of time is when we're cleaning it out once a year. Usually if I go up there, I just go up and dump stuff over the top of the stairs, and then I have to go up once a year and straighten it out. So I've never felt anything up there, but most of the activity that seems to happen that's in the house now seems to happen on the second floor, and the guest bedroom is the place where a lot of activity happens, and that's where there's olfactory activity, where people are woken in the middle of the night by the smells of baking, and they've said apple pie, or they've smelled cinnamon buns, usually something that has a cinnamon kind of aspect to it. And I don't have any cinnamon candles or cinnamon brooms or any of that stuff in the house because it makes my husband sneeze. So it's interesting that they would smell something that I wouldn't have in the house, except, of course, in my baking cabinet. And I've had I've probably 5 or 6 different people who've stayed in that room come up to me in the morning and say, you were up baking really early. And I would say, well, no, I wasn't. You were just in the room where people smell baking. So, and there have also been cold spots in the hall outside of that room. But, it is an old house, and in the spirit of debunking, I can't really say that a cold spot is too surprising, especially this time of year in this house. So, I'm not sure I take that too seriously. I also have a couple of friends who stayed in that room and have heard voices, and it's kind of that mumbling kind of, you can almost hear what's being said in a conversation, but you can't quite hear it. And at the time, especially when my one friend heard it, I know there were no TVs on in the house. It was 3:30 in the morning, and the neighborhood was very quiet because she went downstairs and opened the front door to listen, and there was no noise from outside. And as soon as she went back upstairs and back into the bedroom, she could hear it again. So I've never heard that myself. But I had, like I said, last week, I just heard whispering in the bedroom that I couldn't really identify. And, of course, we've heard footsteps on the stairs and footsteps going across the floor. Heard that a number of times. But, it's a creaky house, and I'm always trying to follow, the spirit of debunking and thinking, well, it could just be, the floors. I'm not really sure about that. So.
How old is the house?
The house was built in approximately 1880. The house was owned for most of its existence by the same family. And in 1965, I think they sold it to the people who we bought it from. And these people had visited us probably just about 5 or 6 years ago, and we hadn't had any contact with them, but their daughters who had grown up in the house wanted to stop by and see what the house looked like now, and we said, sure, come over. And as soon as the gentleman, his name was Frank Costanzo, as soon as he came in the front door, he said, well, have you guys seen the guy yet? And Mark and I just looked at each other, and Mark goes, I haven't, but she has. And I said, he goes, we used to see the guy regularly, and they also had some experiences with cold spots upstairs, and they had the same experience in the back room with the light bulb that you could not ever, that would just keep turning on by itself, no matter, what. We've had electricians check it and everything else, and finally just screwed the light bulb and took it out because, the light bulb kept turning on all the time all by itself. So we're not sure why somebody wants that back room lit, but somebody obviously wanted the light on back there. So that was very validating and really nice for us to, to have somebody else say that they've had very similar or exactly the same experiences that we have had in the house.